The smell of damp earth and stale beer hung in the pre-dawn air. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I watched his silhouette disappear back into the shadow line between the oaks. He was so casual about it, like nothing had happened at all. My name is Arthur Vance. For 30 years, this stretch of land backing onto Willow Creek has been mine. It's more than just acreage. It contains my father's workshop, Mama's award-winning rose garden, and the cornerstones of a life I built, brick by careful brick. The property lines are meticulous. They were surveyed back in 1972 by the firm Hawthorne & Sons. Everything is documented, every deed recorded at the county courthouse. My biggest threat wasn't the occasional overgrown deer path or the relentless summer humidity. My threat was across the narrow dividing line owned by my neighbor, Mr. Harrison. Now, Mr. Harrison has always been a man of quiet habits. Predictable. He kept to his impeccably manicured lawn and waved politely when I brought in firewood. We exchanged pleasantries about the weather or the price of lumber at the local depot on Main Street. Nothing suspicious ever crossed our paths until 3 months ago. It started with the stakes. The survey marker posts are small pieces of painted pine, sunk deep into the ground at precise angles that define where my usable backyard ends and his begins. I keep them marked, usually with a bright orange flagging tape, just to reassure myself when the property tax assessor comes by for an inspection. I found it last Tuesday. The corner stake closest to the creek bank, the one defining the depth of my septic field access, was shifted by about 4 feet. It was noticeable because I know that area intimately. I spent every Saturday morning there weeding. When I questioned him politely, recalling Mr. Harrison's usual deference, he waved a dismissive hand. He blamed recent earth settling from the afternoon rainstorm. Of course, he did. Settling rarely moves stakes this specific. The next week, it was another marker. The boundary line separating my vegetable patch from his overly aggressive rhododendrons. That stake had been nudged, just enough to suggest that the perfect little square I'd envisioned for future expansion of the greenhouse was suddenly facing a significant encroachment risk. I kept documenting it. Photos taken at peak daylight, showing the precise relationship between the stakes and the immovable features like the creek bank itself. I cross-referenced my old survey maps with satellite imagery whenever I could get an internet connection. There was no pattern visible to anyone but me. It felt like someone was playing a game of invisible boundary shifting. Before we go any further, if a story like this hits home for you, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, take a second to subscribe. Now back to what happened. I started feeling the familiar burn of trapped desperation. This wasn't just about property lines. It was about my history, my sense of security, my livelihood. If I let him move these markers without consequence, what would be next? Would he claim the old oak tree that marked the north corner? Would he dispute the access road entirely? I needed proof beyond my own stressed-out observations. I could not afford to call the county surveyor every morning until this resolved itself into a legal battle costing me thousands in consultation fees and weeks of emotional exhaustion. That evening, after Mr. Harrison had retreated indoors, lights out by 7 o'clock sharp, something snapped inside me. I remembered the old trail camera unit my cousin gave me for tracking local wildlife, the kind that records motion-triggered video on an SD card. It was designed for bears, not petty real estate theft, but it would have to do. I waited until past midnight. The house settled around me with deep, groaning sighs. I armed the camera and placed it low, nestled in a thorny patch of wild honeysuckle about 20 feet from the disputed corner stake. It was positioned to capture any movement near the established line. The next 3 nights were agonizingly slow. I checked my phone by the soft glow of the bedside lamp, waiting for the alert that would signal motion detection. Nothing. Just the chirping of crickets and the whisper of the creek water. Sleep became a performance art piece. Falling asleep felt like treason. On the 4th night, It happened around 2 o'clock in the morning. The camera unit blinked its small red recording light almost immediately. The alert came through my phone, accompanied by a subtle vibration that shot straight up my arm. I sat bolt upright in bed, adrenaline an icy wave washing over me. I grabbed the unit from the hall closet and stumbled out to the backyard. I walked slowly toward the camera's discreet placement. My breath hitched when I reviewed the playback on my phone screen. The first few frames were nothing but darkness and shadow play from the moon filtering through leaves. Then a slight scuffling sound. A disturbance in the undergrowth, and then he emerged. Mr. Harrison. He was dressed in dark work pants and what looked like an old flannel shirt. He moved with a practiced stealth that spoke of repetition. I watched him unfold on the screen as he approached the corner stake. His movements were economical, almost professional. He knelt down low to the ground. I couldn't breathe through my nose. Every muscle in my body locked up. I expected him to just examine it, maybe adjust a loose bit of dirt, but he didn't examine it. He reached out with both hands. Slowly, deliberately, he gripped the original survey stake, the one marked clearly by my father's hand, back in 1972. He pulled. It scraped against the disturbed soil. I watched him pivot it, moving it perhaps 6 inches to the side. Then, using a small handheld level that I vaguely recognized from hardware store aisles, he checked his work. A tiny, almost invisible smirk flickered across his face as he straightened up and stood back, admiring his minor vandalism, before melting away into the deeper shadows of the woods. The recording didn't end there. As he moved away, I saw him place a small bag near the stakes, a bag that looked like it was filled with fresh pine stakes and perhaps some bright orange flagging tape. He wasn't just moving them. He was replacing evidence so expertly that by morning, everything would look settled again. I backed away from the camera, my legs shaking violently. The evidence was irrefutable. It was time to stop documenting and start demanding. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. By sunrise, I wasn't trembling anymore. I felt a cold, sharp clarity settle over me. This wasn't about talking or pleading with him. I waited until he started his morning ritual, the slow creak of his gate opening around 8 o'clock. I didn't confront him by the stakes. I walked directly to the edge of my property line, carrying a sturdy manila envelope sealed with red wax. He opened his front door, coffee mug in hand, looking over at me with that familiar mask of polite boredom. He seemed prepared for pleasantries about the local gardening society newsletter. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," I started, keeping my voice steady and level. It felt alien coming out of my own throat. He nodded once. "Arthur. Morning." I didn't let him fill the silence with small talk. I held out the envelope, just enough for him to see the seal. "This contains photocopies of everything," I said quietly. "The original survey maps, the deeds, and the video footage from last night." His casual posture faltered. His eyes flickered past my shoulder toward the stakes, then snapped back to me wide with sudden alarm. The blood drained visibly from his neck. "I don't know what you mean," he managed, but the performance was brittle, a cheap suit tearing at the seams. "I think you do," I countered softly. "You've been adjusting markers for months. You were attempting to illegally encroach upon my established boundary, specifically around the septic field access point." He took a step forward, his polite veneer finally shattering into genuine anger. "You have no right to put cameras up here." "This is trespassing," he hissed, dropping the act entirely. "The law regarding private property boundaries supersedes your desire to steal a few square feet of usable land," I replied, my voice gaining strength with every syllable. "And as for privacy, Mr. Harrison, you are currently violating several local codes by systematically attempting to undermine verifiable property rights." I didn't wait for his sputtering rebuttal. I turned on my heel and walked back toward my porch steps, leaving him standing there in the sudden vacuum of exposed deceit. Within an hour, I had a meeting scheduled with a representative from the County Land Surveying Department. The footage spoke louder than any shouting match ever could. They confirmed it. He was demonstrably wrong, repeatedly and aggressively so. The subsequent mediation process was swift and brutal for him. With the undeniable visual proof, the grainy but damning images of his hands moving my sacred markers in the dead of night, he had no choice but to retract every claim he'd ever made about that corner of land. The county surveyor even suggested a formal, professionally surveyed restaking session supervised by all three parties, which Mr. Harrison gratefully agreed to. The lines are clean now. They are staked with new official markers, photographed and recorded in triplicate at the courthouse. My peace is restored. It took waiting for a camera to capture the undeniable truth, but I learned that sometimes the most sophisticated traps aren't complex gadgets or dramatic confrontation. They are simply patience, documentation, and refusing to let the trespasser believe that shadows can hide theft from someone who knows exactly what he was trying to take. If this story meant something to you, do me a small favor. Tap the like button, subscribe to the channel,